And I was just going to stay at home and get completely obliterated with the concept of, if I can't beat you, I'll join you. I had 2 seizures that just very nearly ended my life via a drink, because it was my solution, until a bit later when it became my biggest problem. My liver count was 2000s. You know, I wouldn't wish what I had gone through on anyone, and one of the reasons I tell my story is because I don't want it to be someone else's story. And I also don't think I would have survived if I didn't make it home myself.
My name is Nicole Young, and this is the Rock Your Bottom podcast. Welcome, Brooke, to the Rock Your Bottom podcast. I am so happy to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you're doing.
I asked you before we sat down today to bring a quote with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically asked you about a quote that I guess you have used in your recovery to help you in each day. Are you willing to share that quote with me this morning?
Absolutely. And I have it tucked away in my brain. I share this a lot when I go out and speak at different rehabs. And it is, instead of wanting to escape from your life, create a life you don't want to escape from.
Wow.
And that quote really resonates with me, because my life was such that I couldn't imagine it without a drink in it.
Yeah.
And now I can't imagine my life with a drink in it. And so it really reminded me, as time went on, one day at a time, that I really could build a life that brought me so much joy and so much peace that I wouldn't turn to that next drink.
You just mentioned that you have shared that at multiple sort of things in your recovery. Whereabouts have you shared that quote with other people?
I've shared it at different rehabilitation centres around Auckland as part of the service I do in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've also found myself sharing it with people that I meet from the rehab that I was in, which I go and visit regularly.
Yeah.
And it's also a good quote for life too, I think. So some of my friends have been on the receiving end of that as well. But a lot of people in early sobriety, especially when I'm sharing, say at a meeting, for example, an AA meeting, that'll often form a part of my shares.
Nice. I think that was a beautiful quote. And
thank you.
It definitely really hits home, doesn't it? And it resonates a lot to what we do today. You spoke a little bit about how you are a part of AA and things, and we will get back to that at a different stage during this episode. I would love to just actually dive into your story, Brooke, and start from the beginning. And I'd love for you to just share with me today a little bit about who you were as a child and what your childhood was like.
Sure. Well, I'm 38 now.
Yeah.
And I had a dream childhood. Honestly, I was very lucky. It was idyllic in that all of my dreams were nurtured and I was just supported in every area of my life. I had a great education and I was raised solely by my mum. So my birth father, unfortunately, was a very violent, abusive man. And my mum was smart enough and strong enough to take me away from that when I was very, very little. I can't even remember him. And so she raised me all by herself, and it was just the two of us. I'm an only child. So we became very quickly best friends. She was my only family, my pillar of strength, the great love of my life. She was my everything. And she taught me a really strong work ethic as well. So I watched her work exceptionally hard to provide the life for me that she didn't have herself. I come from very humble beginnings and yet had such a privileged upbringing. My mum did not drink alcohol until she was 40 years old, and I lost her to alcoholism, which we can talk more about as the interview proceeds. But so I wasn't in any way affected by substance abuse of any sort when I was growing up. My childhood and my schooling were immaculate.
Talking about your dad and how he wasn't in the picture for you while you were younger, do you think that that had an effect on you while you were growing up?
When I think back to school,
Yeah.
I remember being bullied a lot. So I was bullied a lot because I was a nerd. I was always very academic. I was on the honours roll and all of the rest of it. But I went to a Catholic primary school and I was bullied a lot for not having a dad, for being a geek, and also for being obese. So whilst my childhood was fantastic, school oftentimes wasn't. But in terms of my own life experience, I never felt that I missed out on a thing because my mum did such an amazing job as far as I was concerned. It was just her and I against the world,
Yeah.
so to speak. So I never felt that a father figure was missing. But in school environments, I was definitely reminded that I didn't have that.
Well, that's incredible that you were able to make such a deep connection with your mum, and she was not only your mum, your dad, but also a best friend in one, you know, like I can so totally relate to that myself. Growing up into high school and your experience, I guess, there, did even though your mum didn't start drinking till quite a later age, did you experience, I guess, what you could call the party scene or anything like that when high school sort of kicked off? Was there?
I wish I could sit here and say I was wild,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I was actually a total nerd. Again, I was
yeah,
on the honors roll. I was top of all of my classes. I was on every committee.
yeah.
I was a head prefect in my senior year, and I just was so
Didn't.
focused on school, so focused on my great love of performing arts
Yeah,
that I didn't venture down that track. Going out for me was like going to Burger King and going to the movies.
yeah,
And I was allowed to try small amounts of alcohol.
yeah.
But my mum started drinking when she was 40. So I will have been about 16, 17 years old then.
Okay.
And that's when I started going very much off track.
Yeah.
So
So
I started drinking around the age of 17, 18.
17, 18, and thinking back to that, can you remember what your first time was like being intoxicated and what that whole experience was like for you?
I can remember one occasion at home thinking that because mum's drinking was getting very out of control, and because I could see it was affecting her life and it was affecting the lives of those around her and especially me, I can remember one occasion where I decided that that was that, and I was just going to stay at home and get completely obliterated with the concept of if I can't beat you, I'll join you.
Wow.
And I remember being filled with a sense of relief and like nothing really mattered, and that this is just incredible. It is the answer to all of my problems today and then probably tomorrow and the day after that. But I just sort of jumped on board, not because my mum wanted me to, but because I was just struggling to deal. And I also had a lot of anxiety and depression in those late teenage years. So my first experience that I can really remember drinking was not a great one. I did have some great ones, but that sticks in my head is that one night when I was on the stairs at home, just an absolute mess and not being able to control my emotions and my actions. And I just remember liking an aspect of that, liking the not caring, but also being a little bit scared by how out of control I was at the same time.
Totally. Can you tell me a little bit about how your mum's drinking started to affect you as your teenage years progressed and you got into your early 20s? Would that be something you would be willing to talk about?
Of course.
Yeah.
So my mum's drinking progressed very quickly and for no apparent reason. And it really, really bothered me because I didn't understand what was going on. In some ways, it was like going from having my dream life to my nightmare, my worst nightmare overnight. And it really was hard on me because I felt that I had to keep what was going on at home a secret because my mum didn't want people to know. And behind closed doors, only I could really see what was going on. And I was drinking as well, but it just really, really stressed me out. It upset me. And I remember trying to do things to get her help and her not wanting that help, thinking that it wasn't a problem. But for me, it was becoming a problem because it was a daily thing and it was starting to impact her very successful career that she had and other things. And I think for me, it was that feeling of I've still got to go out in the world and be this successful little Miss Perfect young woman that everyone else expected me to be. And I was trying to carry the pressure of university and everything along with what was happening at home. And I was also by myself in doing that. So I didn't have family support around me. And I felt I couldn't say anything and reach out and get support myself. So I just had a lot on my plate and it was really hard. And I dealt with that via drinking. I mean, at this point, I was dealing with everything wrong in my life via a drink because it was my solution
Yeah,
until a bit later when it became my biggest problem and the
totally.
core of all my problems. But it was really hard. It was mum and me in a home and my dad, who I call my dad. I must add that my mum did meet someone when I was 10, but he would get up and leave me with her. He didn't tolerate her drinking. He'd just get up and leave and go back to a different house. So it was just a really lonely, isolating, helpless sort of a time.
My heart goes out to you, Brooke, because your experience is an experience that no young adolescent should really face. When you are in a home, you are meant, or society tells you that you are meant to have two parents, and you are meant to have this and you're meant to have that, and sometimes that's just not the case, and things do get swept under the rug, and it does come down to that sort of statement that it's not fair that other people get this, why can't I yeah, my heart is with you about your mum, and I'm so so sorry about her, because yeah, what an incredible woman she must have been for you to still have such a, you speak of her so highly, it's really 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 amazing. As much as she had her demons, she was still your mum, and that's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And she's still my hero. She's still
exactly.
my best friend.
Exactly.
She's my higher power. She's my guiding light. And
Totally.
I'm forever grateful for the upbringing she gave me.
Yeah.
And now that I've learned about what alcoholism is, what it can do to a person, I understand what she was going through. And I
Mm.
also know that she would understand what I've been through
Yeah.
as well. And that has made my healing process so much easier. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't wish what I had gone through on anyone. And one of the reasons I tell my story is because I don't want it to be someone else's story.
Yeah.
Mm.
You've spoken and you've painted a real picture about your childhood, so thank you. I would love for you to tell me a little bit about what university was like for you, and I guess your years of early 20s into late 20s
Mhm.
sort of time.
Sure thing. So I went to university
Yeah.
and I graduated with a communication degree.
Amazing.
Thank you. And I was top of my class. So
Yeah.
I was a scholar, I was on the dean's list. However, me getting through university was really, really hard behind closed doors because I didn't want to be there. I just did not want to be there. I'd worked so hard in high school and, of course, had everything going on at home. And I just wanted out of the pressure to always get the grades and to always deliver on my definition of success at the time. So I was drinking. I was drinking to get through my studies. So I would be having a bottle of wine, for example, to write an assignment that I would then get an A plus on, but I could not remember writing the assignment. So I was really playing Russian roulette with my time at uni. But my friends didn't know. And I knew that my drinking was a problem, but I thought, well, I mean, I'm in my early 20s, so I'm going to figure it out. It's fine. It's just one of those youthful things. And
Yeah.
I'm not drinking like mum, so therefore I must be okay. And I could still go out with my friends socially. And I had a load of friends and do the student night thing, do the go out, dance and drink until 3 in the morning, and go to McDonald's sort of thing and go to all the parties and stuff. And I enjoyed that part of uni life very much. But it was my behind closed doors drinking that progressed. And that progressed into my career, my early career. So I graduated uni and I got into some very good jobs straight away. But I'd never had this burning desire to be a communications manager. You know how in your career, you hopefully have people who you want to be a lot like in your own career. But I didn't have that dream. I just had this glittering piece of paper. So I had really great jobs, and in the realm of communications and PR, there is a lot of alcohol. And of course, there's a lot of alcohol everywhere, but I began to use alcohol as an acceptable way to end my day. And then by the time I was about 22, I would have started drinking in the morning or taking my lunch break and having alcohol and hiding it. So I was already becoming a master of deception because I would always deliver on my job. I'd always do my job well, and nobody at that point in time ever suspected I had a drinking problem. But I was going home, and I think by the time I was in my mid-20s, drinking at least a bottle of wine a night and getting up and functioning, and still having that pattern of normal drinking mixed with very abnormal drinking. And my career at the same time was progressing. So I was climbing the corporate ladder. And then after reaching director of management type level in comms, I decided to take a chance and do my own consultancy. So I started my own communications consultancy, which was really successful, and I had some massive corporate clients. But what that did is also give me the chance to work on my own schedule as long as I met my deadlines, and therefore I could drink on my own schedule. So those last few years of my 20s were, I thought, really glamorous, but really they were not, because I was getting exceptionally sick. And I was also extremely depressed because the pressure of my career at that point was like, felt like I was reaching the top and bottoming out all at once in something that I never really wanted in the first place. And so I went overseas. I decided to take my youth visa because I was 29 by now and was running out of time to actually be able to do that, to go and work overseas for 2 years. So I went over to London, and I spent my first 6 months in pubs drinking. And then I decided that it would be a good idea to work in pubs because I wanted to do something different. So I basically ended up resigning from 3 different pubs because I decided that actually I belong in front of the bar, not behind the bar. And at this point, I've got my mum on the phone being like, you've become a hard out alcoholic. I would love for you to come home and go to rehab. And I was like, no, I'm going to make it. And I got an amazing job. I got an amazing job in the West End doing what I love the most, which is working in performing arts. I was the front of house manager for the Phantom of the Opera in the West End. And that was incredible when I got to act in London, and I got to do all the things I love doing. So there's no way I was going home, because now I was like, I'm doing this, I'm changing my life. I'm very drunk all of the time, but I'm still changing my life. And I got into some very dangerous situations when I was in London. And I remember one occasion, just to give you an example of not remembering getting home, but waking up and my phone was completely smashed and I had a black eye. And there were so many situations like that in London. And I did come home after my visa expired. So that was a very convenient way for me to be able to leave my job and come home and know that things were actually spiraling miles out of control. And when I did come home, I was 31, or just about to turn 31. And I got a glimpse of just how sick my mum had become during the 2 years I was away. And I spent her last 9 months on earth with her. So as much as I didn't want to come home, I'm very glad I came home because I got that time with her. And I also don't think I would have survived if I didn't make it home myself. So that's me up until 31.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about how that conversation with your mum and you, and she was telling you to come home because she wanted you to get help. Was there also a conversation where the tables were turned and you were telling her that it was time for her to get help?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The amount of times that I got very angry at her. I remember throwing things around And I got very sad and I got very frustrated and I said a lot of horrible things, and that's not my nature. And because she wouldn't get the help. And I wanted her so desperately to get the help. And there was that other element of me that was like, you're telling me I need help. You're telling me I need help.
Yeah.
And you want me to come back from London and my fabulous life and get help, but you need help and you're not getting help. So no. And there was that defiance there for sure, absolutely. And it saddens me to this day that she didn't find what we have.
Yeah. Oh, that's so hard, Brooke. But I'm just so glad to hear that you did come home and you did spend those last 9 months
They
with her.
were amazing.
What a gift,
An
a real
incredible gift.
Yeah.
And I think it was very hard those last sort of few months. My dad looked after her. She didn't want to go to hospital. Again, stubborn as a mule, as she used to say.
Yeah.
And to see her demise and to see her almost give up. And I do remember she was in hospital the last week of her life. And I was asked, if she could have one last thing, what would it be? And I remember that moment just sitting there in a tiny room, bawling my eyes out and thinking my mum is going to die.
Yeah.
So I organised for her to have her last drink and to have the dog come in. 2 things they don't allow in a hospital, booze and dogs. But I was like,
I'm gonna
it's
fucking
my
do it.
mum.
Yeah,
I'm
this
doing
is-
it.
yeah.
You're going to make this happen.
Totally.
And we had some amazing moments her last 9 months. We basically drank together the whole time.
Yeah.
But I don't regret that, and I think I was too unwell to see that I need to stop this, and she was too unwell to want to stop it. And so it was a sad last 9 months, but I'm grateful I got that time with her. And I'm grateful that I got to say the things that I wanted to say to her. Yeah.
She would be so incredibly proud of the woman that you have been able to become in recovery and the things that you have been able to achieve thus far. And I can just imagine her, up there just being like, that's my daughter.
Yes.
Go, like that's just.
That's what she used to do.
Yeah.
I remember doing a show and she was in the audience for like the second time.
Yeah.
And coming onto the stage and just trying to focus. And all I hear is my mum going, that's my girl.
That's her. Yeah.
So she was like that. She was always my biggest support. And I just feel her with me each and every day. I know she's very much with me all the time. So
that's it's an incredible gift to be able to feel her around you. And one thing I was told in the early days of my recovery is that my higher power talks to me through other people.
yes.
And oh my God, when that was said to me, I was like, oh my God. And so I would be having these conversations with different people, wondering if my mum was sort of talking to me, like coming out and being like, yeah.
I know. I mean, my mum is my higher power. She always was from the moment she departed Earth, but I didn't know what a higher power was until I came into AA. But I absolutely fully believe that she talks to me through other people. And it's funny you should say, because I remember meeting you and you had gotten up and you talked about your journey with your own mum. And that's what made me approach you afterwards and say, I can actually really relate to what you've just said. And that's my memory of meeting you. So how much you inspired me. And I thought, here's someone in this program who's struggling and gets what I might be feeling right now.
Wow. It just goes to show that degree of, being able to open up and how, I guess, just sometimes saying things that you personally don't think is going to help or benefit anyone that day actually does.
It's so true.
It's a powerful thing being able to connect and talk to another human being on these sort of levels. And
I know.
Wow.
I mean, I have become a lot more open. I used to wear a huge mask, like, my life is perfect, thank you very much. And it's like, P.S., it's falling apart at the seams. But, and so I was very masked, and I'd always be talking about the good aspects of my life and how great it was, even if it wasn't. And these days I've found the benefits of just, I know who I am now. I don't wear a mask. I'm able to be myself and to share things that are hard to share because they help you and they do potentially, as you say, help someone in the room. I think if I can say something and someone can walk away and go, okay, I took that from the meeting today, then that's great, you
Yeah,
know. And there's no judgment.
totally. It's funny, because I totally think that you've hit the nail bang on the head with that. And that's pretty much how I came up with the idea of this, what we're sitting and doing now, because I think the future holds so much for people wanting to get well and wanting to be able to connect with someone. And I truly believe that if we utilize the tools that we've got with the social media, and
Mm,
we've got things like Spotify and YouTube and all of these amazing things that 50 years ago, 20 years ago, it wasn't there, we start
yeah.
utilizing these things for things like this. Imagine how many more people are gonna benefit from hearing your story that weren't sitting in that AA room yesterday, like it's just
I absolutely agree. And I think it is one of the best ways forward in terms of normalizing not drinking
yeah.
and also why people drink, not just how much. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of emphasis on how much do people drink. It's like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, why is this
People are
person
really struggling
drinking?
with their mental health.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people do, point the finger and are very quick to judge someone on the things they use to cope. But actually, if you lift up the blanket and ask that
Absolutely.
question, why, more often than not, there are underlying things that are going on that no one has any idea about. And
Absolutely.
it's actually just about being kind.
It is.
Like being kind doesn't cost anyone anything.
It doesn't.
It,
Kindness and empathy without judgment goes
yeah.
such a long way.
Now, Brooke, going back, you spoke about how you spent the last 9 months of your mum's life alongside with her, and we spoke about how much a gift that was. I'm intrigued to know, what did life look like for you after she passed?
Life after mum passed away was one of my drinking progressing even further. I was drinking more, I was drinking more often, and I was a very broken human being. And my first thing that I did was escape back to London.
Yeah.
I'd already booked a trip, and it was about 2 weeks after she passed away. I went over to London with no desire whatsoever to stop drinking, but every desire to just escape. And so I drank solidly and found myself in even more dangerous situations than I ever had before. I was very sick. I couldn't work. I was just literally drinking all the time, and I was experiencing a lot of blackouts. And on one occasion, an ambulance was called because I just couldn't walk. And there were a lot of things that were happening that had indicated that my drinking had reached the next level. And I kept on going back to London for 6 months at a time because that was the maximum my visa would allow.
Yeah.
And as time progressed, every time I went, I would be doing what we call geographical. So I would go back over and I'd say, this time I'm going to get sober. And my alcoholic brain was such that I'd be thinking, I'm going to go over for 6 months and I'm going to come back with a fantastic husband, a kick-ass career,
Yeah.
sober, all of that. And every time I came back, not just worse, but more miserable. And I did eventually go into a rehab. So my dad had encouraged me to go to a rehab, and I would just lie and say that, yes, they've called, or they've got too many people in at the moment and they can't take me, but I'm definitely going to go.
Yeah.
And I'd moved up to Auckland and I'd bought an apartment on Auckland's Viaduct, which was just super handy if you want to get drunk all the time because there's some fabulous bars there. And all I had to worry about was getting in the elevator and
Totally.
just coming back up home. So that was my lifestyle. And one of the rehabs my dad had phoned continued to call. And I was drinking down in one of the bars early in the morning when this rehab phoned. And usually I wouldn't answer a phone call first thing in the morning when I've been drinking from a number I didn't know, but I did. And it was the rehab, and they were asking me about whether I still wanted to come in. And I think I knew in that moment I was very sick.
Yeah.
I was just really, really unwell, not desperate, but I knew I needed something to just put me a bit more okay than I was.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I can come in now. And they said, well, yes, you can, because you're actually meant to be here now.
Yeah.
So I got in a taxi, and I think in my head I was thinking it was going to be more of a hangover cure, or sort of just a moment to reset so that I could get back to drinking, but a bit more controlled, as we often think. So I went in, and by the time I arrived, I couldn't walk. So I'd completely lost my mobility. I ended up in a detox for 4 days, wearing an adult diaper, which was a definitive life moment for me in terms of low. And I couldn't eat, and I was just emotionally and physically broken. I'd done damage to my muscle, like muscle degeneration, and I had a lot of health problems. My liver count was 2,000. So just to put that in perspective, it's meant to be about 30 to 50, I think. And so I was in deep trouble. And I didn't realize that I'd checked into an AA rehab. So that was the other thing. I had really preconceived ideas about AA. I thought it was a religious program. I thought old religious guys go to all these meetings and they talk about how life is awesome because they're religious and they don't live under a bridge anymore, drinking out of a flask, basically. So as soon as I started to come to a bit and realized I was in an AA rehab, I thought, well, I can't walk out, can I? I can't walk, so I can't leave. So I was
no going nowhere.
I was literally,
Yeah.
I was stuck in this AA rehab. And as part of my detox, I had to do the 30-day program that they had. So I did the program, and I, by this point, had been told this is a spiritual program, not a religious program. And that made a massive difference to me because I immediately thought of my mum, how she was my higher power. So I found that component of the program very easy. However, I was also introduced, of course, to step one, and it's step one for a reason, meaning we are powerless over alcohol. Our lives are unmanageable. And I looked at that and I thought, you people are so stupid, because if you're going on about spirituality and you like to drink, instead of praying for recovery, why don't you just pray to drink responsibly? So that's exactly what I did. So I would show up to class and I would wear this massive mask of, I'm never drinking again. This is amazing. I love this program, and we'd be taken to a meeting every day. And I would talk about how I just am so happy to be getting sober and healthy and how I love the meetings and all of that. But I'd be on my knees in my room at rehab talking to mum, my higher power, and saying, okay, mum, I don't want to be sober. That's just a lie. We'll just keep them, at bay. Anyway, I need you to show me how I can drink responsibly. Okay, you're my higher power. We got this. And every time I went out and tried, I had anything but it. Like, I was just drunk and I was full of lies, and my relapsing got worse and worse and worse. I would come back, get breath tested. You've been drinking. Oh, no, I haven't. I'm just wearing loads of hairspray. It must be the alcohol in that. Just excuses. And
so you were in rehab and you would go on like outings and you'd actually go and get pissed?
I was in the 30-day program, so I didn't get drunk for that.
Okay.
I didn't. I did all the work. Did all the work that we were expected to do over those 30 days, and I didn't relapse, but I went into a sober living program.
I see.
So it was at about 60 days that I thought, this is a great environment for me to experiment with responsible drinking. So I was praying to mum, and because I was in a sober living environment, there was more freedom because it's designed to help you get back out into the world sober.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I need to get back out into the world able to drink. And every time I prayed on this, I would relapse. And then after being caught a few times and shuffled around rooms, and there were consequences, as I totally think there should be. There were consequences, but I was given so many chances. And I eventually decided I'd buy my own breathalyzer.
Yeah.
So what I did was I would go on my free time out. I would go for a walk or shopping, as I called it. Then I'd go and have a drink because I knew that by the time I was able to get back there'd be no alcohol in my system if I was smart, and I was smart and I was very stupid because I would be hiding it in my room, and I was just playing Russian roulette with my life. And after 8 months of sober living, I decided I would leave because I'd been given so many chances and I knew I'd drink again, but there was also a part of me who knew that my behavior was unsafe for other people. So I was behaving in an unsafe way in a safe environment, and I knew that wasn't fair. I didn't get kicked out. I was just given so many opportunities to get sober with the right consequences, but I didn't take it. And so when I left rehab, I went, guess it, back to London.
Yeah.
But I actually did do, before that, a detox in the rehab that you are extensively involved with.
Oh, yeah.
And I was told there that going to London would be about the stupidest thing I
Yeah.
could do in my very early recovery because I was absolutely broken.
Yeah.
I was completely broken. And I thought, no, it's going to be fine. You know, this detox will be the one.
This is
This
it.
detox of my many, many detoxes is going to be the one. And again, I'm going to go to London and I'm going to change my life. And it's that repeated pattern of addict behavior. And of course, I didn't listen to you guys. And I just went to London and I was drunk halfway through my flight. I had 3 transfers. I was drunk the moment my plane touched down in London. And then things got very, very bad. I got engaged because he asked and I said yes. And he is, I'd known him for a very long time, but I basically arrived in London.
Yeah.
I hadn't organised anywhere to stay.
Oh my
I
gosh.
phoned him. He came and he said to me, you know, I knew the moment I met you 10 years ago that you'd be the woman I'd marry. And I said, well, let's just do it. So I put it all on my social media and I was just out the gate. I had not planned this trip at all. It was just, I was drunk. And things got very scary in that I was in hospital twice when I was in London.
How long did it take for you to get admitted into hospital the first time?
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard because their system, unfortunately, is a lot similar to ours, and that they don't just readily take people into the hospital for a medical detox. So it was hard, but the 2 occasions that happened after that, so I'd come home and then went back again, and then I had to go in because I was taken by an ambulance.
Yeah.
But what had happened is that I'd had seizures at this point. So I was having seizures that were lasting for just about over a minute. And at the time, the man I spoke of was in a hotel room with me. And I had 2 seizures that just very nearly ended my life because they went on for such a long time. And I was told later that anything longer than a minute and a paramedic will start injecting you,
Oh my
or a medic will
gosh.
start taking further measures when it's not naturally passing. So I came out of that and I gave him the scariest day of his life. And then I did get a detox in a hospital that was about 10 days, which is quite long for a detox. And I just knew then that the smartest thing for me to do would be to return back to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And you would think that I had then got sober, stopped drinking, and that's my story. I had seizures, I nearly died, and then I got well, but unfortunately, it's not my story. I picked up again, and what scared me the most is that I picked up without planning to pick up.
Yeah.
They say your relapses are oftentimes planned, whether you're aware of it or not. But I thought that I was so scared that I wouldn't do it. And I was just out and I just picked up a drink and I drank it without giving it, obviously, enough thought. That relapse was my last relapse because at the stage I'd gotten to a point where I needed another detox and I was sent away by a hospital and I was put on a public waiting list and I'd blown up my life to a point where I couldn't go back into any rehab that wasn't a public system. And so I was just drinking to try and wait to get in somewhere. But I also knew I was in a really dangerous place because I couldn't keep drinking and I couldn't stop drinking because of my medical history of seizures.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of beating myself up and a lot of why I can't believe I've done this. I nearly died. How could I have done this again? And I guess that's a mark of just how powerful, baffling, and cunning the disease really is. But I remember sitting outside of a mall in West Auckland drinking wine out of a pump bottle designed for water. And
Oh
I
my God.
remember thinking, I am so stuffed. I have a stronger word for it, but I can't keep drinking and
Yeah.
I can't stop drinking. And therefore, I can die at any minute now, either which way. And I need help, but I can't get the help that I need right in this moment because the
Yeah.
hospital won't take me. I mean, at one point, I was in hospital 11 times in 1 year. So I remember that moment because I was just sitting outside feeling completely and totally helpless, and my phone rang. And someone had actually cancelled a detox and they called me to say, can you be here in an hour? So that to me is a God job,
Yeah.
so to speak. I felt that was my mum looking down on me and saving my life for the upteenth time. So that was also my last drink. And I did my detox, and what changed for me was the surrender was there. And I often talk about it now as being a program of surrender,
Yeah.
that you can do all the work, but if you don't want it, and if you don't have that spirituality, that being able to hand it over to something greater than yourself, whatever it is you believe in, because you can't do it alone, that's when I really thought, okay, my mum saved my life here, and I just need to do this and I want to do this. So that's when I really started giving my full self to my recovery.
Brooke, earlier you were talking a little bit about seizures and how you have experienced seizures in your journey. I would love if we could just quickly dive back into what those were like for you. And I'm really intrigued to know if they were, I guess, what's the word I'm trying to look for? If they were caused by alcohol withdrawal or if they came about from another medical reason.
No, they didn't come about from any medical reason. They were purely because I had alcohol withdrawal.
Wow, that is
So I had alcohol
scary.
withdrawal so severe
Yeah.
that it sent me into a seizure because I knew it wasn't safe for me to just stop. But when I was taking on board the amount of alcohol I was drinking, 24/7, I had alcohol in me and I just wasn't drinking enough. And that tipped me into a seizure in London. That was my last one, but I had two in succession. So really it was
Wow.
two seizures, my last experience of seizures.
Yeah.
I had had one prior, but this was really scary in that they went on for about a minute each. And
Yeah.
I was told that if they'd gone on any longer, then I would have been in deep trouble medically. So it was alcohol withdrawal, and it's a very real thing. And I think a lot of people don't realize just how dangerous it is to stop cold turkey,
Yeah.
or if you are drinking to a place where you're physically dependent on the
Yeah.
alcohol, then you need to make sure that you withdraw off of it safely, that you do a detox that's medically safe to be doing. And I wasn't doing that. And to make matters even worse, the lovely man in my life, he was trying to get me off the alcohol, but he drinks Guinness, not wine. And as luck would have it, he was buying alcohol-free wine to try and get me off of actual alcohol. But he didn't
Oh.
realize he wasn't doing it to be intelligent. He was
Yeah.
doing it because he thought he was buying wine and I couldn't taste the difference because I was bedridden. And I remember thinking, I'm getting sicker. I'm getting sicker and sicker as the day is going on, and I'm not feeling the effects of alcohol, but not really questioning what I was drinking, just
Yeah.
trying to slow down. But I'd stopped completely without even knowing it. And that tipped me into dangerous, dangerous seizures.
You poor thing, man. Like, honestly, I look back at all the sort of, I guess, articles I've read and videos I've watched about how severe and dangerous alcohol withdrawal is, because I've been through it myself and it's a scary thing, dude. Like, honestly, I remember my first detox like it was yesterday, and it's something I hold very close to me today still, because I know that if I start forgetting what that
Mm.
was like, it puts me in a dangerous, dangerous place with my mind thinking that everything's okay, and just thinking back to the articles I've read, like I said before, like I was reading an article, I can't remember where it was from, but the way that this person explained how, you can be here one moment and gone the next, pretty much because, you didn't get the help that you needed with a medical detox. It is a really real thing. And like you
Mhm.
just said, people, I don't think, understand how dangerous it is, full stop.
I don't think so, and I think that they should, and I think a lot of people need to,
Yeah.
because in trying to stop drinking, people
Yeah.
do lose their lives.
Yeah.
And I remember being told when I had my last detox that I got as a god job because someone cancelled, that someone had died on a waiting list that was 6 weeks long because they just couldn't cope, and they had an accident under the influence, knowing that it wasn't safe for them to stop. And I thought
Yeah.
that could have easily been me.
Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky ones, and I don't forget what it was like.
Yeah.
And I, God willing, do not want to go back there because it is the scariest place I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. Totally. It's it's incredible to have you here today, following this God journey of yours, and earlier before the podcast started, you told me how sober you were, and
Mhm.
I would love for you to share with me and share with us, Brooke, your sobriety time, and I guess that moment you stepped into this recovery for the first time, and how has this whole experience been for you?
It's been beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's true. So I've been sober 18 months now.
Wow.
After my last detox, I really wanted recovery. I surrendered to it. And as I said before, that was key for me. So my life now has been one day at a time. One day at a time, it's just gotten better and better. But it has not been easy. My first few months of sobriety, I really struggled because I was at that point where I didn't want to drink, but I didn't know how I could ever fix the mess that I had made and called my life, because I just, every aspect of it was ruined, and so I made some really big decisions. Like they say, the only thing you have to change is everything. And I did. I ended a really unhealthy relationship that I was in. And I had to change my lifestyle because I'd lived so extravagantly, hence me not being able to go back into a rehab because I'd really, really cut into all of my resources. So I had to learn how to budget, how to live more simply, and I hadn't been able to work. So I was dealing with feelings of, now I'm not succeeding because I'm not working. But I actually decided to take that time out, my first year of sobriety, to focus just on recovery, because I knew I had to lay a strong foundation for my recovery. So I was able to take that time, and that's when I really threw myself into going back to the rehab I was in, volunteering. I did a few mental health and addiction papers, and I was going to a meeting every day. So part of having seizures is that I couldn't drive for a year. So I would get on a bus and I would go anywhere in Auckland, and Auckland is massive,
Yeah.
to get to a meeting. And I just want to give a big shout out to my sponsor, because she stuck by me through my entire journey, and she still stuck by me after everything and took me on board again, and we worked the 12 steps. So I've worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that has just changed my life, because I now have a program, not just for sobriety, but for living life on life's terms.
Yeah.
And that's made a massive difference. So it's been an incredible year of recovery and learning the power of recovery and self-discovery, self-awareness. And
Amazing. Tell me a little bit more about those first couple of months for you, Brooke, when you did step into the space. You have named some really awesome tools that you have used in your recovery, such as going to meetings, going back to your rehab and volunteering and stuff. Was there a sort of structure you used, I guess, day to day that you put in place, or what I could call it as a routine that you had in place on your day to day that you believe helped you just get that extra day sober?
absolutely, routine was paramount to me. And because my focus was solely on recovery,
Yeah.
I would start my day with my morning routine, which consisted of a prayer to my mum.
Yeah.
And I still do the same prayer to this day, 18 months on. And basically, I pray for a blessed, sober day. And I hand my will and my life over to you. And I pray for the knowledge to carry your will for me out. And then I tell her I love her more than anything in the whole wide world, because that was our special saying.
Yeah.
And then I will have readings that I do now and that I did then, and some meditation. I'm not the greatest at meditation, so it's something that I've had to work on. But
Yeah.
I would do these things because they were routine, and a lot of the rest of my day was spent doing step work or going to a meeting, connecting with other alcoholics, going back to my rehab, which I'd go to once a week. And I do a lot of writing. So I'd write a lot about my journey as well. And just planning my days around things that were healthy for me too, which was big. So going for a walk or making myself something nutritious to eat, because the simplest things were all I could really do. Those first few months were very, very hard for me. And there were days that I just couldn't function in terms of, I just couldn't get out of bed. And I would always say to myself, if my head hits the pillow sober tonight, it's been a good day.
Yeah.
Because then I've achieved my primary purpose in AA, which is to stay sober and help other alcoholics. But I wasn't there yet, because I still needed to do a lot of help, get a lot of help, and all of that sort of thing. So I didn't realize so much at the time, but I do now, that even just showing up to a meeting is helping a fellow alcoholic.
Totally.
So
Totally.
doing service became a big part of my early recovery as well. My sponsor's really big on me doing service as well as just exercising the program of recovery by way of meetings. So that helped me meet a lot of different people at different meetings, just something as simple as doing the dishes, and then later more comprehensive, so to speak, service. So I think for me, I wouldn't have had it any other way, just having every day structured around healthy recovery and a nighttime routine as well. So if I do nothing else at night, I write a gratitude list for my sponsor, and I also write a step 10, so a daily inventory of myself. And I say to my mum, thank you for this blessed sober day. And I'll thank her for the good things in my day. And then I will go to bed sober, and one day at a time. But I've done that for 18 months. So
Brooke, we just spoke about how amazing it has been for you stepping into the space of recovery and sobriety. I just want to reflect for a second and ask you to think back if there was anything that happened within your first year of sobriety or recovery, we like to call it, that that you tried to navigate, and if you faced any challenges within that first year.
I definitely did. And the biggest challenge for me came a couple of months into recovery. So, as I explained before, I was doing all the things because I wanted a healthy and happy recovery more than anything.
Yeah.
And I got to about 2 months of routine that we spoke about, and I still felt really depressed and really overwhelmed by life and what I was doing and where I was going. And I remember saying to my sponsor that if I still felt this way in 6 months' time, that I would probably drink again, or at the very least consider it. And she was completely understanding.
Yeah.
She is obviously very experienced, and she was just appreciative of my honesty around that, really, because I remember saying, I just want to lie on a beach in Spain and drink wine.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do because I don't want to feel like this and I don't want to drink yet. I'll give it a solid 6 months.
Yeah.
And she said to me, how about thinking of it more as one day at a time, that rather than putting a deadline on it? And so that's what I did. I said, well, I'm going to stay sober today. That's my aim today. I'm just not going to drink today and we'll do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's that concept that's essentially got me to 18 months.
Totally.
Because I think as time went on and I got further into the steps and further into my self-discovery, that I realized that I could cope with things sober. With every little challenge that I overcame, I realized actually I can do all of these things sober.
Tell me a little bit more about how you ended up navigating your emotions in those first 6 months of recovery. You spoke already about how you didn't like the way that you were feeling and the fact that you had to deal with these emotions on a day-to-day basis, because the reality of it is that you were suppressing these for so long.
Mm.
What was it that got you past that 6 month milestone and you actually got to that 6 months and you decided not to pick up that drink?
Faith.
Faith?
My
Wow.
faith in my mum that she was guiding me toward my best possible life on earth. I never lost faith in the fact that I was still on earth for a reason. I've always believed that she saved my life so that I could achieve things that brought me joy on earth. So I never lost sight of that. And as I worked more and more on the steps, as I got to 6 months, by that time I had done my step 4 of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was a huge deep dive into my past and all of the resentments that I had held about people, places, and things and why. And I went right back to my childhood, right through to now. And I was completely honest. And my sponsor said to me, I want you to be thorough and I want you to be honest. And so when I read those things back to her and when I looked at my place in them, and I was able to see my character defects and my patterns of behavior, I could see very clearly in black and white what I could work on, what I needed to work, if not on, then work through. And so that's how I started to really unpack my life as it had been and then have the tools to transform it into what it was now. And I'm definitely a firm believer in getting outside support if you need it. AA helps me stay sober and it gives me this fantastic program for living. But things like counseling and therapy are also things that I've had to look to as I realized I have other issues in my life that need to be addressed in a healthy way. So I did that as well.
Whoa, good on you. I just absolutely take my hat off to you for the way that you have been able to get through these past 18 months. You've stepped into a space and just pretty much grabbed it with both hands and you have started running with it. Looking at that, Brooke, it is really, really hard for just the normal person to be able to do, and to be able to take on not only themselves, but take on every little aspect in your life. And you have been able to, get into a program for living. You've made connections. You've been able to stay sober for 18 months. You've now spoken about how counselling or therapy has also helped you navigate other areas of your life. And that's fantastic.
It's great because I didn't even really know what those areas of my life were that I needed to dig into further to understand how I could let things go, because that was a humongous part of my journey so far has been letting go of the past, letting go of things I can't change, being able to identify aspects of my behavior, not just that they need work, but actually how to work on them. And that's where things like counseling and therapy came in handy, because AA helps me with my alcoholism as it pertains to alcohol. But I learned that my drinking was actually a cover for so many other issues in my life. So they went hand in hand. The more I unpacked my step 4 and the more I was able to see, I've got these defects or these patterns of behavior, or I've got anxiety, depression, fill in the blank, whatever it was, I could then go, I need to take these things further to a specialist in whatever area it may be to guide me through so that the same things don't come back and bite me
Yeah.
further down the track, because then I'm at risk of picking up again.
Yeah, totally. Do you think that the 12 steps has helped you become a better person?
Absolutely, 100%. Someone said to me when I turned 1 year that my recovery has been like night and day,
Mm.
because I didn't have the self-awareness that I've got now. And I talk about self-awareness a lot. It's very dear to my heart because I didn't know who I was sober. And I remember thinking, I don't know who I am, and completely freaking out. And then thinking, well, this is great because I have a clean slate and I can become the person I would like to be.
Yeah.
And when I was drinking, I was always a nice person, but I was also very deceptive because I was lying all the time about my alcohol consumption and therefore about other things. And I was a people pleaser. It's one of my greatest defects that I've had to work on, a perfectionist. And I realized more than anything that most of my step 4 boiled down to fear that I wasn't good enough. So that was like a really, really big thing for me, is to get to that place of knowing I'm enough.
How do you think that you have worked on that feeling of not being good enough? Because I know that there are so many people out there that also struggle with that, myself being one of them, actually, not being good enough, a good enough friend, good enough partner, good enough at my job, good enough, and wanting to be enough. How did you navigate that?
With many challenges,
Yeah.
I'm still not perfect at it. I still have days where I think, oh, that's just not good enough. And I've been able to separate the difference between I could have done that better versus I, as a human being, need to be better,
Yeah.
because I've worked really hard to become a person that I'm proud of. So if I can look in the mirror and say, I like who I am, I might not have liked how I behaved today. I might not have done that job the best I could have. I perhaps shouldn't have said that thing. That doesn't make me a bad person. That just makes me a work in progress. And I think we always are. And that's one of the reasons why I value my step 10, which I do for my sponsor every day, is so that I can actually look at my behavior and go, I am enough. I am enough, because there's no such thing as the perfect person I was always trying to be. It's an impossible goal. You'll always be disappointed with yourself if you're trying to achieve the unachievable. So my expectations of myself had to be more realistic, and perspective was another big thing that played into that. I mean, I think for both of us, right, you look back on life now versus what it was way back then, and you realize, good enough. I mean, I've come such a long way. That is more than good enough. Going to bed sober consistently is more than good enough, so perspective around that has definitely helped. But
Brooke, I absolutely love your message and love what you have just spoken about with, it is about progress, not perfection.
absolutely.
And one day at a time, if you can hit the pillow sober, that's a tick in my books. And it is okay, because tomorrow is going to be a new day, and tomorrow you can work on being 1% better again, and that's enough. Just looking back, Brooke, on your recovery and your sobriety, and you have spoken and talked about what everything has looked like for you, and your journey has been absolutely amazing. And while we were talking, I was actually reflecting a little bit about what the New Zealand drinking culture is like. And I wanted to ask you what your thoughts and feelings are around the New Zealand drinking culture, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I think that drinking has been entrenched in every aspect of New Zealand culture for such a long time.
Yeah.
I think it's everywhere. It's social. We do it socially. We have it at home. It's so readily available. And I think especially with younger people, that idea of binge drinking has historically been normalized. So I think that in New Zealand, definitely in the past, drinking's just been a big part of culture. It's just like a normal thing to do. It's expected sometimes, and I think sometimes there's pressure to drink even if people don't want to drink. However, I do think the New Zealand drinking culture is shifting a little bit, in that people are becoming a bit more aware of mental health and aspects of why people are drinking. And I think there is more being looked at in terms of how much is this drink adding to my life, and how much is it taking away by a lot more people.
Do you think that the drinking culture had a part to play in you normalizing your substance use?
For me, I think it was mostly genetic, but what the drinking culture did is it gave me an excuse to pretend I drank normally when deep down I knew I didn't.
Yeah.
So I was able to disguise my drinking within a heavy drinking culture because everywhere I went, be it at work or with friends, there was alcohol. So I would just be appearing to drink because we're all drinking, but I would also be going home and drinking. So really, it gave me an excuse to drink. And if anything, it made my drinking worse.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I think it is a really interesting topic to talk on because the New Zealand drinking culture, as much as you did speak about, the movement is shifting, and I believe it is as well. It is interesting because what I see on social media of the people around my age and younger isn't what is being put out to the public. And yeah, I don't know. I've had a couple of conversations with people over the past couple of weeks about, I guess, the youngsters not wanting to drink as much as what people used to drink like back in the day, if that's what you could call it. But yeah, it's a funny thing because I personally think that the reality of it is that prices of alcohol have been put up so high at bars and clubs and stuff that these adolescents are actually just drinking the $10 bottles of wine from Pack and Save before they go out, and the drinks aren't $2, $3, $4, $5 anymore, and that a drink can be anywhere up to $15. So of course they're not going to buy drinks out and about. And
no, and I think that's totally true. And there are a few things that I think can make a bigger impact. And one of those is what you're doing now. So one of the reasons such a privilege to be here is because I think that if people who are influential on social media, influential in their space, actually do something like this, that it has more of a presence within the social media sphere, then there is more of an impact because that's where a lot of people now are going to for, well, everything. So I think when influencers can share their sober stories more, that gives a lot of impact and a lot more empowerment to, hey, I can have a happy life sober. So I think that's a really big thing. And I also think education, awareness around what drinking abnormally or drinking alcoholically can actually do. And I think more awareness around mental health as well in terms of how it correlates to the disease of alcoholism or addiction. I think we need to be a bit more proactive versus just looking at the prices of alcohol and how we can control that. Because as an alcoholic, if the price of alcohol went up, it wouldn't bother me. I would still drink because I'm addicted to alcohol, and I know not everybody's like that. So really, I think the attention needs to go to when you have a problem drinking, like what does that look like? What can you do? I do think like more accessible services would be fantastic, coupled with more education, because you heard me talk about how hard it was for me to get a detox sometimes via the public system. I mean, it's really not all that easy sometimes to know, well, where do I go for help? How can I access that help? Do I need it? How do I know if I need it? All of that.
It's interesting you say that. That was going to be, my next question to you is, what do you believe needs to be put in place for a brighter looking future? And it's awesome to hear you state several different things, more accessibilities to detoxes and I guess, just people with a little bit of influence promoting it, because you're right, there are a lot of people out there that are sober curious these days, and when people with a little bit of influence do talk and conversate about this topic, we are bringing light and education to it, and that's a positive in my books, as well as I bet it is in yours as well.
Absolutely.
If you had the opportunity to go back and talk to your younger self before any of this took place, and you had little Brooke sitting in front of you, what do you think your message to her would be?
I would love to tell little Brooke that nothing matters more than your health, to choose yourself, to surround yourself with positive people, to commit to your passion, and to not feel that you have to drink to fit in, and to not feel that you have to escape from yourself, because you can have a healthy and happy life without alcohol in it, and to focus on being your best self, to not compare yourself to others, and to not be scared to reach out for help when you need it, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. So, to be courageous and to be true to yourself and who you really are, and always, always put your health first, because without that, you can't achieve anything.
Oh, babe, you've got me nearly in tears, actually. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, holy shit. It's one wild ride, this whole life thing. And I feel like we don't talk enough about how quickly it goes by. And sometimes it does take a lot for us to just pause and reflect.
Oh, yeah, I love this. It's been just such a wonderful opportunity to sit down and, you're so dear to my heart of my recovery, as you know, but to be able to really stop and think, wow, I am very lucky to be here, and not just be here, but here with this fulfilling life now,
Yeah.
because I chose recovery. And this is something I also say a lot of, that for me, there's no holier than thou. I wanted to live and drink, but my reality, based on my story, is that I can recover, choose recovery, and choose life, or I can drink and die. There's no in between for me. I cannot safely drink alcohol. And to be able to accept that and reflect on it and be proud of that choice and happy within it, that's a big thing.
If someone was listening to this that potentially could be struggling out there, what would your message be to them about their first steps that they should take in getting help?
Awesome question. I think the first thing is, when you realize that alcohol or a substance is a problem for you, it is a problem, and that you need to reach out for help. As scary as it can be, I think a lot of people still see it as a weak link. I can do this alone.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that I couldn't stop drinking alone. So the first thing would be to reach out for help, and to know that there is a lot of support out there. And I definitely think being around people who build you up, be it a recovery program, good friends, whānau, family, any of that, whatever is going to be your support network, is going to be vital for your next steps, whether it is to go into a treatment centre, to get into a program like AA, whatever that looks like. I think you need to be around the right people, and to be able to say, I need some help. What's next?
Definitely 100% wholeheartedly agree with you. We are here in Auckland, and there are a couple of facilities, I guess, around here that people can reach out to. Off the top of your head, do you have a couple specifically that you could name that people could reach out to if they did feel like they needed help?
Well, of course, I'm going to talk about the rehab that I was in,
Yeah.
which is the Retreat New Zealand.
Yep.
So that is a private rehabilitation centre for alcohol only. And that's where I went. And it, to this day, has changed my life. I also did a medical detox at a place called The Turning Point, which is another private rehab. And the people there are lovely too. But those are private rehabs, and there are some public ones that I go and speak at, and they are called The Bridge is one, and that would probably be the biggest place that I would start in terms
Yeah.
of reaching out. There are public and there are private, but I definitely think to be going online and looking at your options and what are the better ones for you, because everyone's different.
Oh, amazing, Brooke. I just want to say a massive thank you to you just for coming
Ah,
on here, being open about this, being honest with me and willing,
of
and
course.
sharing your story, because your story, I truly wholeheartedly believe, if it hits the right person out there, will change someone's life.
Oh,
It
thank you so
is,
much.
yeah, you have. I'm speechless for words, really. Your message is so clear. Your recovery is so strong, and it is so cool to have you on this journey. Hey, before we wrap this all up, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say anything in this space. So I'm just going to let you have the floor. And
I think this has been such a thorough opportunity to sit and reflect on my journey. So I thank you so much for having me on. The biggest thing I want to say is that everyone's journey is different. You do not need to go to the depths of alcoholism like I did to get the help that you need. If it's a problem, it's a problem. Your journey is important because it's yours. Your health is important because it's your biggest asset. So I just want to encourage people to look at getting some help, at least be open-minded in getting some help, because I never in a million years thought that I'd have the life that I've got now 18 months ago. And it is possible. Recovery is so possible, and there's so much support out there. You don't have to do it alone.
oh, how amazing is that, Brooke? I just want to say a massive thank you for coming down and sitting down with me today, sharing your story. It has been nothing but a real privilege, actually, to be able to connect with you in this way. And like I said earlier, I am more than positive this is going to reach someone that needed to hear it. A massive congratulations on your 18 months.
Thank you.
I cannot wait to see what the next 18 months has in store for you. It is going to be amazing to be on the sideline watching. And yeah, well done, babe.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you, Brooke.
Instead of wanting to escape from your life, create a life you don't want to escape from.